So we begin, Rasika ho suswagatam. That was in Marathi. It means culture lovers, welcome. Rasika ho suswagatam. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Welcome to the 12th edition of the Goa Arts and Literature Festival. We call it GALF, organized by the Goa Writers Group and the International Center Goa. GALF was first held in the year 2010, the year Shakira did her Waka Waka thing. GALF has been supported by several government and private organizations, but has remained free to attend and is volunteer driven. I will ask you a few questions, audience. You may tell the answer to whoever is sitting to your right or to your left. Question number 1, what is your idea of culture? Is culture about food, music, language, clothes, rituals, religion, manners? Is culture related to the place that you come from? What makes you a rasik? What makes you a lover of all things joyful? Question number 2. What is the difference between tradition and culture? Removing chappals before entering a house is tradition. It's part of our larger culture in the continent. Inviting writers, musicians, and artists from far-off places to GALF has been our tradition. It's part of our larger culture of accepting different points of view from people who come from different places. At GALF, we talk to people who are articulate thinkers. We ask them how they cope with despair and what makes them laugh, what makes them tick. Question number 3. Why do we have a festival like GALF? To see beyond life, whatever exists beyond our cell phones, to hear new music, listen to people from other parts of the country, different parts of the world. We bring exposure to good artists, good writers, good musicians, and that's what makes us rasiks. That's what gives us culture. At GALF, we come face to face with those who appear and sound different from us, and we find that we feel the same sorrow and joy, the same humor and annoyance. Under our skins, we're same. In the past, we have had some big names here, poets, novelists. We have had military-related works discussed here. We've had policymakers, movers and shakers who have taken questions from people like us. Many of the best books, though, we can't read in the language that they were written in. So they are read in translation. I could not have enjoyed Omar Khayyam if it wasn't for a translation. Through translations, a Jharkhandi can read Tagore, an Assamese can read Manohar Rai Sardesai, a Haryanvi can read Shakespeare. So translations are very important, as we will see in parts of this year's GALF. We have had writers come to the Goa Arts and Literature Festival from Kashmir, from our northeastern states, from central and southern states, from Sri Lanka, Pakistan, Bangladesh, the UK, Canada, and our world in Goa has expanded through their literature. Now we come to the arts. So what about art, you might ask? Art is all around you. The design of the soap you use, the chocolate you eat, the shape of your bike key, the graphics of the video game that you play, your phone itself is designed by an artist along with technical people. What you wear, the mehndi on your hands, your spectacles, your house, cooking utensils, the rangoli, the kandil, the insides of a church, compound walls, even web pages. I did not make this introduction heavy with names or titles because I know most of you would have gone and seen the books over there. You will Google names and authors. So art may not fulfill our basic needs, but when you put a sticker on your vehicle or a poster on a wall, it's because you like it. You wear bracelets or earrings to make you feel good. That's art. And art does not differentiate between who likes it and who does not. The plants on kitchen windowsills, your favorite colors, we are surrounded because art creates environment, literature creates environment, and that's what makes us rasiks or culture lovers. Art, like music, can make you happy, can make you sad. It can give you an identity. If I were to sing na 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 na, you know which state I belong to, which language I'm speaking in. You identify me with a certain culture. That's what music does, that's what literature does, that's what art does. So literature, art, and music are life enhancers. And the Goa Arts and Literature Festival brings you things you never thought of or saw or heard, thanks to the International Centre Goa, the sponsored and the sustained behind-the-scenes efforts of Bhai Mauzo and senior journalist Vivek Menezes. This year we have performances by singer-songwriter Aku Chingangbam, the Stuti Choir, and Sonia Shirsat. The writers present include new ones like Devika Rege, Sohini Chattopadhyay, Yogesh Maitreya, and Manish Gaikwad. Also known names like Alan Seeley, K.R. Meera, Robin Nangom, Vivek Shanbag, and Mini Krishnan, to name a few. This GALF will showcase Rehman Abbas's Urdu novel Ek Tarah Ka Pagalpan, based on the Konkani Muslim community, and Vasudhendra's Kannada novel Tejo Tungabhadra. Make it a point, ladies and gentlemen, to see the work of the photographers Tarun Bhartiya from Shillong and Sanna Irshad Mattu from Srinagar. We now have keynote addresses by Mamang and Ranjit Hoskote, a reading of poems by Meena Kandasamy, the unveiling of Sagar Naik Mule's painting, and the launch of Bhai Mauzo's latest book, In Conversation with Vinuta Malya. The first keynote address is by Ms. Mamang, poet and novelist. A former journalist and Padma Shri awardee, Dai is a recipient of the Sahitya Academy Award 2017 for her novel, The Black Hill, in English. Her latest book is an anthology of poems, The White Shirts of Summer, published in October last year. She lives in Itanagar, Arunachal Pradesh. There's been a small change. May I request Dr. Pushkar to come onto the stage and say a few words?
Actually, before I say anything, I have a quick announcement, and this announcement I hope will be made again actually, and we'll also be putting up notices outside each of the halls and in the reception area. Tomorrow at 6 p.m. The venue for GALF 2024 will shift for an hour or so to the Raj Bhavan, which is not far from here. So the notices that will come out will basically say that you need to send an email. The email address will be provided, prog-officer@incentgoa.com, and you'll need to submit a government issued ID well in advance, that is before 10 o'clock tomorrow, and your name, cell number, whatever, because we need to submit everything by email to the Raj Bhavan by 11 a.m. tomorrow, and without that you will not be able to enter the Raj Bhavan. So details will be provided, but please be on the lookout for notices that come up, and I or someone else will try to make another announcement to this effect later today. So you basically have to send an email with your name and your Aadhaar or any other government ID to prog-officer@incentgoa.com. Okay, now that is taken care of. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the 12th edition of the Goa Arts and Literature Festival. And welcome everyone who is here on the stage, which is keynote speakers Mamang and Ranjit Hoskote, artist Sagar Naik Mule, curators and writer Damodar Mauzo and Vivek Menezes, Yatin Kakotkar, president of the International Centre Goa, trustees of the International Centre Goa, delegates, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen, and a couple of very close friends who are joining me actually for GALF 2024. This is the fifth golf that is being organized with me around, and it is always a pleasure to welcome writers from all over the country, a few from abroad, to the Goa Arts and Literature Festival. I'll repeat this, although not everyone likes this description. We are a small festival, and we like it that way. GALF is organized by the International Centre Goa in association with Goa Writers. For GALF 2024, let me begin with the thanks. I would like to first heartfully acknowledge the support of the Raj Bhavan, and in particular of the Honorable Governor of Goa, Shri P.S. Sridharan Pillai. GALF's longevity, it was mentioned earlier, it started in 2010, is due to the support it has received from ICG's trustees. For the past many years, ICG's President Yatin Kakotkar has shouldered all the responsibility for raising the funds needed for organizing GALF. All this comes at a considerable cost, even a small festival. And without Mr. Kakotkar, I cannot imagine this festival happening. For those of you who are attending GALF for the first time, and I know there are some of you are regulars, some of you who have come on and off. But for those who are attending for the first time, give me a couple of minutes, and I promise, literally a couple of minutes, to talk about ICG. The center came up in 1996, and since the beginning, the trustees of ICG have aspired to make the institution a financially independent, non-partisan ideational center. Today, other than GALF, ICG organizes or has been also organizing a variety of programs independently or in collaboration with academic institutions and occasionally other organizations. I am especially proud of our Scholars in Residence program, which we started in 2019. Of the 9 writers we have selected so far, 4 have already published their books with prestigious publishers in India or abroad. And 2 more, perhaps 3, their books are due to be published in 2024. I think that's an excellent track record. On behalf of ICG, I would like to thank our festival partners, Goa Writers. The 12th edition of GALF is co-curated for the 12th time by Damodar Mauzo and Vivek Menezes. That's a huge achievement. I would also like to thank Sagar, Naik, Mule for preparing the official GALF 2024 artwork, which I have seen, but you will get to see later. Thanks are due to all our sponsors, donors, and volunteers, without whom the festival would not be possible. GALF 2024 has received significant contributions from HDFC Bank, the Dempo Group, Ask Wealth Advisors, Department of Tourism, Government of Goa, Prudent, Axis Bank, and Broadway. We are grateful for their support. On behalf of ICG, I would also like to thank our media consultant, Mr. Rahul Chandavarkar, and our social media consultant, Mr. Michael Praveen. Michael was amazing last year, and I'm confident that he'll be doing a great job this year too. This year, like always, the media has been generous with their coverage of GALF, and we appreciate that very much. Thank you again to all the speakers and delegates for joining us for GALF 2024. Finally, I would like to appreciate the efforts of the ICG team, beginning with Nilima Desari, with whom most of you have communicated if you arrived from somewhere to Goa. And she has handled much of the back-end work that goes into organizing an event like this. Over the last few days, Teja Naik and Anupama Ghosh and our support staff, in particular Sabina, and the housekeeping department and the front office, they have been of great help as well. The credit for dealing with, taking care of all these, small and big organizational issues goes to ICG's General Manager, Mr. Vivek Pathian, and I would like to thank him for that. Thanks, everyone. That was about 2 to 3 minutes. Not too bad. Thank you.
May I invite Vivek Menezes to say a few words?
Thank you, Sheila. And thank you, Pushkar. And on behalf of the entire Goa Writers Group, including our dear Sheila Jayawant, A big thank you to Yatin Kakodkar, who has really kept this festival going, and to the entire International Center team for all the hard work that goes into this glorious gathering. Once again, on a beautiful evening, high above the Zuari River in Amche Bangarache Goem. It's such a pleasure to be here with you all, and especially all the delegates who have traveled from all over India and the world. Mai Mogache Yokar, welcome. Friends, we all know we live in complicated times. But today, let's count our blessings. It's a day for celebration, both individual and collective. From my perspective, standing here before this gathering of the very best and our absolutely most admired writers, artists, photographers, filmmakers, and musicians, this feels like an absolutely valedictory moment. The good old Goa Arts and Literature Festival has arrived again at the very end of what seems like an interminable series of Lit Fests this year, a veritable profusion of Lit Fests, in which many of you who are gathered here today have garnered seemingly all the glories. Mr. G.J.V. Prasad, who is here, has just won a prize. Devika Rege has just won a prize. Sohini Chattopadhyay has just won a prize. Robin Gangom, who I do not see here, has just won a prize. There are many, many more such examples. All of you could be named, really. But one that we all cherish, and I particularly am taking great pleasure in enjoying, is the fact that our Damodar Mauzo is still the reigning Jnanpith awardee. Later today, he'll be in conversation with Jerry Pinto, who has won all the prizes. Viva, as we like to say in Goa. Congratulations. We cherish you and all your victories, and we will celebrate together over the next couple of days. Friends, as you heard from Pushkar, please register. Please register. As difficult as it may be, please register. But tomorrow evening, we have the rare opportunity to reconvene at sunset, just down the river from here, at the confluence of the Mandovi and Zuari rivers at Aguada Bay, one of the great crucibles of what the West now likes to call globalization. That is the poetry reading at Cabo Rajnivas, at which both Ranjit, Hoskote, and Mamang, two of my favorite poets, will read along with others. Unfortunately, Meena will not be here, but you should definitely not miss it. However, due to an unexpected emergency, the governor, the honorable governor himself, will not be able to be there, nor will he make it to the expected morning session when he was scheduled to speak about Vasudeva Kutumbakam, the brilliant Upanishadic concept of the world as one family that is the bedrock of our cultural identity on the west coast of India, in the honorable governor's native Malabar, and especially our own Konkan coastline. By the way, I'm sorry, I'm fumbling and also peering. I grabbed the wrong glasses, which is a wonderful thing at my age. Anyway, here, up and down this very river, and up and down the Mandovi that flows just below us in that distance, the rest of the world as one family, has always been present, always been connected, always received with tremendous equanimity and aplomb and openness and an equality of exchange that is palpably different from other parts of the subcontinent where you come from and the world. Here, as far back as 1,000 years ago, the Kadamba rulers who ruled just upriver appointed an Arab Muslim prime minister to their entrepot, the rich trading port where the world came to do business on equal terms. From here, at a time when other Indians were being crushed under the British jackboot, the great Francisco Louis Gomes sailed in the other direction to Europe, where he represented Salsette and Canacona in the parliament in Lisbon, and became an instant sensation in Europe by seizing the moral high ground and arguing passionately against slavery. This was during the heyday of that institution, and far ahead of any of his contemporaries in the rest of the colonial world. Francisco Louis Gomes possessed the cultural wherewithal to demand liberty and light for India. Friends, Just over a decade ago, the great novelist and writer Amitav Ghosh addressed the GALF inauguration just like this. First, he noted with great acuity that one thing that unites the Indian subcontinent is that we make many of the same mistakes. Another is that certain traits endure, our tastes, our injustices, our eccentricities. They endure in every corner of this landmass. Yes, yet, even as they endure, they are refracted into startlingly different configurations. There's an analogy here, a beautiful analogy he makes with Indian classical music. The notes of a raga are always the same, yet its realization is always unique, unrepeatable. The music exists only in the moment, in improvisation. However, Amitav also pointed out that nothing is more difficult to recognize than the new, and nowhere is it more difficult to recognize than in Goa, where the past has such a weighty presence. We know very well from the history of modernism and the arts that the challenge of the new is often met with bewilderment and anger, confusion and outrage. Ghosh says that he says, quote, "I have long been fascinated by cosmopolitanism, and the one thing that I've learnt about it is that it's rarely to be found where one might expect. The cosmopolitanism of New York, for instance, is often a kind of provincialism, for it assumes that its existence is proved by the mere fact of having a variety of cuisines at its disposal. Similarly, it is perfectly possible to travel very widely and yet remain completely provincial. European colonial officials made a practice of this in the 19th and 20th centuries. World Bank functionaries excel at it today. One of the ways that, says Ghosh, that Goa is new is that it has invented a kind of One of the ways in which Goa is new is that it has invented a kind of cosmopolitanism that is peculiarly its own. It is a cosmopolitanism of lived experience, a cosmopolitanism of inner dialogues, where the outsider becomes part of an inner voice, sometimes embraced and sometimes excoriated. This voice is nonetheless not ignored as it might be elsewhere. Friends, all that is so true, and yet it is so often forgotten. In the extraordinary mess that is the contemporary state of Goa, which right now sadly is itself a kind of first prize winner, we tend to forget everything that has gone well, all the ways in which the Goans have succeeded and indeed shown the way to the rest of the world. This event to me is just one more indication. Look out amongst you and to each other. What a rare gathering. What an unusual coming together. My dear friend Mamang and my equally dear friend Ranjit Hoskote are getting ready to address us. Manipur is here. Kashmir is here. Ari Gautier and Pondicherry is here. Naomi Dugood and the entire culinary universe is here. As Hazrat Nizamuddin Aulia said, Hanu's Dilli Durast, but Mr. Mani Shankar Iyer is here, and that the center is here along with him. Friends, in closing, I'd like to point your attention to one of the greatest writers of India, and indeed one of the finest writers of our times, without any further qualification necessary, the great Irwin Allen Seeley, who is seated here amongst us. Big hand to Mr. Seeley, with thanks for joining us. You can come and see Mr. Seeley and myself in conversation with each other on the 17th. But I want to end by describing another conversation we had on my first visit to his lovely home in Police Lines in Dehradun. Friends, you've just heard me at great length on Goa's cultural history, but for Alan, forgive me Alan, this is not the first time. I poured my heart out about Goa to him in his home in Dehradun. You know, the losses, the disrespect, the displacement, the familiar lament of so many of us in this tiny land under immense pressure from the rest of the world. Mr. Seeley was sympathetic, but not quite with me all the way. Finally, he told me, "You don't know how lucky you are." Friends, I was taken aback, but then I began to see his point. The world has changed so much, but we are still here. The colonialists came and went, but the Goans are still firmly in place. What is more, through all the vicissitudes of 20th century upheavals, the immense projects of decolonization and nation building, Goa is distinctly one of the great winners of history. We have our own state. Thanks to Bhai and other stalwarts of this unyielding culture, we have our language enshrined in the Constitution. Ever since that conversation with Mr. Seeley, I have taken great satisfaction in being Goan in Goa. And this moment with all of you is one of the all-time highlights. Thank you. I hope you enjoy the festival.
Dear Rasiks, Rasika Ho, we get back to listening to our writers now. The keynote address by Mamang Dai, the keynote addresses by Mamang Dai and Ranjit Hoskote follow. A reading of poems by Meena, Kandasamy. The unveiling of Sagar Naik Mule's painting and the launch of Bhai Mahzo's latest book, which was translated by Jerry Pinto. The first keynote address is by Ms. Mamang Dai, poet and novelist. I read this before, but I'm just repeating it. A former journalist and an IAS officer and a Padma Shri awardee, Dai is recipient of the Sahitya Academy Award 2017 for her novel, The Black Hill in English. Her latest book is an anthology of poems, The White Shirts of Summer, published in October last year. She lives in Itanagar, Arunachal Pradesh. Mamang Dai.
Thank you. Yeah, I think this is okay. Thank you, Sheila. Thank you. You read my bio twice, so thank you very much. And I have been here before, not exactly on the podium like this, but on several occasions among friends. And I've met so many poets, writers, people. Of course, the man of letters, Damodar Mauzoji, and travel writer, photographer Vivek Menezes, curators of the Goa Arts and Literature Festival. So thank you very much for having us here. And my colleagues, distinguished colleagues on the podium, good evening everyone present here for the 12th edition of the Goa Arts and Literature Festival. I have a festival poster actually tacked up in my room. It's been there for many years. It was, I think, one of the first, the different ways of belonging. The idea really appealed to me. It was very beautifully done, I think, by Miss Patel. Yeah, Amruta. And it's been there, it's still tacked there. It falls off, curling at the edges a little bit, but I push it back with blue tack. And then I thought, okay, this is a broad topic. Maybe I can frame something around this for this address. And then just a few days ago, I saw 30 Ways of Belonging. There is an anthology coming out with the Goa Writers Group. I thought, oh no, now. And then again I thought, oh wow, like great minds think alike kind of thing. But anyway, it can be conversations by the sea, conversations by the Zuari. After all, human beings are discourse, said Rumi, and why not? This is what literature is about. Conversations in the night, conversations by the sea, meetings on the riverbank, conversations on the mountaintops. This is our own different ways of belonging. The flowing moves through you, whether you say anything or not. Everything that happens is filled with pleasure and warmth because of the delight of the discourse that's always going on. I remember in the 2016 edition of GALF, we had, I think, a focus on Northeast region, and there were many writers, authors, musicians. And if I, drop names here, it is done with fond remembrance and regard. The rock legend Lou Major was here. I think Madam Margaret Alva also was here. And there was a whole northeast corner. So it was, writers all thinking their thoughts, pursuing the freedom of writing. In 2014, great excitement, my book, The Black Hill, was released or launched here by Father Victor Ferrao of Rushall Seminary. Of course, it was fixed by Vivek, who had also written about an inappropriate suitcase in the Garden of Eden, I think, or Paradise, regarding his travels to Majuli Island in Assam. And it was quite exciting because I kept calling Father Ferrao Vivek Ferrao and calling Vivek Vivek. So the names were getting a little bit switched. But anyway, those were the occasions, we remember, all memorable. 2014 was also the time, the year, that edition, when journalist and editor Rajdeep Sardesai's 2014, the election that changed India, was launched. And looking back now, almost, a decade later, one might even quote William Butler Yeats and say, changed utterly. Just the other day, I was in Nagaland, Dimapur, at the White Owl Literature Festival. White Owl is the name of a bookshop, and this was the first major literature festival and book fair in collaboration with Penguin Random House and Oxford University Press. So it was a time when one could catch up with a lot of friends. The area is so, the geographical distances are so much that even though we have friends in the region, in every state, it's not always easy to just go and visit and catch about news and, certain very deep issues that have hit the area. No one imagined anything like the current situation in Manipur would erupt so suddenly. But then, our worst fears happen in the blink of an eye. Here and there, I am reminded of center and margins, the peripheries, and so on. We are always talking about these things, but the so-called margins are in itself rife with a myriad diversity and differences. Nothing to say of the centers or political centers. If you look at the landscape of the Northeast, for instance, you were talking about, the crucible that is the Zuari, Mandovi thing. The Northeast region also is one of the most culturally diverse regions of the country, with the ethnic and linguistic populations. It was also always a very globalized part of the country because free trade, border movement was going on with Myanmar, neighboring the Mekong Delta, the Shan states, and further on into Southeast Asia, following the current dictum, look east, act east. However, there is a wall coming up now or a proposal between the Indo-Myanmar border, some 1,500, 600 kilometers. Another view is that a lot of writers from the Northeast region write in English, and also that a lot of the writings will be about oral myths or about conflict scenarios. But the literature scene is also as wide and varied as the number of ethnic and linguistic communities. So this is the diversity we actually celebrate. I've always believed in diversity. We talk about, the unique selling points of each region. That is also diversity. I feel difference should be acknowledged. After all our lives are different narratives, and no one's thought or life can be greater than the other. The moment we acknowledge we are different, I am different from you, I think we are halfway to a step towards coming to say, in the words of poets and mystics, say, I am you. But you have to acknowledge the difference also. How wonderful it is to read, say, literature from Mexico or Japan, to discover a Native American author. In fact, I just discovered the great Scott Momaday in Dimapur on just scrolling because I was feeling a bit, inert in the evening. I thought, okay, waiting for the next program, and I saw something called When Dogs Could Talk. And I thought, because of my dogs at home, I thought, oh, let me see what's this. And it was fabulous about orality and so many things. And I thought, isn't it wonderful? At least this has found me, To read about nature, ecology. I also just recently discovered in translation writers like O.V. Vijayan, because I was doing a book for Aleph, in search of the Indian village. And I thought, how late I'm finding out these things. But anyway, one counts one's blessing. At least I got to read these things. So agreed. This is a picture of a literate society, but even otherwise, different communities, I feel, left to themselves, share food, stories, their personal beliefs, and who knows, shared interests, and work out a balance in living close to one another. I always believe that true believers are eternal seekers, and this is where, the moment some force intervenes and tries to impose a certain uniformity, then that single picture deforms and kills the value of human lives and all beauty with it. A taste of this happened to me during the COVID pandemic. The rhetoric, the travel restrictions, the lockdown, all this appeared like a test run for future lockdowns. Of course, I acknowledge the illness, injury, but there was so much fear and panic around. And with the scenario of, cadres of enforcement explaining this is for the public good, this is for your well-being, I almost felt like it was a test run for that, brave new world where everyone will suddenly say, it's not so bad after all, we're doing okay, the nation is doing okay, I'm okay. But I felt restless, disobedient, anxious, alone. I was also refusing to take the vaccine until the travel restrictions were imposed and we had to come up with that stupid mask and, vaccinated certificates and whatnot. Anyway, during this time, poetry returned to me. It was like a lifeline. A war was raging. Washington was talking about virus attacks. Beijing was being secretive or retaliating. There were rocket attacks in Gaza, Jerusalem already. Back and forth, big pharmaceuticals were getting into the act, UN advisories and meetings. And sitting in Itanagar one evening, I listened to a Chinese poet read Ode to Humanity with lines that ran something like this. I have been quoting it a lot. Now is the time when Italian tears should blur Chinese eyes. Now is the time when moans in London should make guitars in Spain whimper. For me, it was like a breakthrough moment, a breathing in of the power and magic of words. Someone was opening a window, and words of loveliness and generosity were curling around to embrace us in this sad, anxious time. Of course, in our daily lives, we encounter all sorts of discord, and we take careful steps to overcome setbacks misunderstandings, even in our own homes, step by step. And now I realize giving attention to people, to the small gestures, is important. Perhaps it is even the first step towards empathy. This is something I have come to realize in hearing our mythologies and listening to people's stories, where I find an inherent underlying patience and kindness. Rituals are an act of courtesy. Paying attention, the attention given to signs from the natural world, is like worship, a mark of reverence. I have also learned to appreciate the science and psychology of the longhouse, a place that may have up to 17 fireplaces. I always thought, wow, this is something interesting, anthropological, but I think our ancestors knew you don't always want to share your fireplace with someone, so there are options around. You can go to that fireplace, that kind of thing. So the psychology of that. Of course, mythologies, indigeneity have their dark side, as we know. And of course, not everyone can champion justice or beauty against all odds. Sometimes the situation is such that we don't even know what to say to each other anymore. Speaking for myself, I really don't know about, we can't really be part of and talk eruditely about nationalism, patriotism, the theories of political scientists. And we often think, as writers sitting at home, where am I in this thought traffic? What does it mean to be me? At such times, I think, meeting like this, discourse, engaging with other literature lovers, helps us to tap into our invisible roots and be who we are. We find books, books find us. A story is endless and forever new. Here is an extract from Barry Lopez. It's been with me quite a long time, and I've been holding on to it because I find it very relevant to what I'm doing, to who I am. It's about a morning when a letter arrives. He says, I remember the morning the letter came. It was from the Office of Inland Security. And the letter said, the human imagination, the letter speculated, was a problematic force. Its use best left to experts. An imagination in the wrong hands, missing the guidance of democratic reasoning and fed the wrong ideas, an imagination with no measure of economic awareness was a loose canyon. The letter's authors informed us of the persisting need for democratic reform, and already music, films, some performances were already declared undemocratic. To question anything was to meddle in the nation's destiny. So, quote Lopez again, the contents of the letter galvanized each one of us, everyone packed. We are not to be found now. We have unraveled ourselves from our residences, our situations. But like a bulb in a basement, suddenly, somewhere, we will turn on again in the darkness. We will carry what we know, what it can mean to have your country under you like a hammock, what it is to take part in the world instead of using your people as fodder in a war to control the world's meaning and expression. We'll carry all of this into other countries. It will be hidden in our individual skills, in our dress, our speech and manner, in the memory of each of us. The memory of one will kindle the memory of another, a burst of electricity across a chasm. We will disrupt through witness, remembrance, and the courtship of the imagination. So ultimately, I think, in our own little ways, the thing to do is, in our home states, to nurture and reach out across to find meeting grounds like seed gardens to remind us what it means to be human. Perhaps then our contribution to society lies less in political action. I'm speaking for myself because we are like rather very solitary in the background type of writers, or thematic correctness, than in the two social needs that a writer is best prepared to fulfill: language and imagination. So thank you very much, Goa Arts and Literature Festival, for giving us these liberating spaces where we can talk again. I'm sure the next few days we'll see a lot more of talk and discussion and exchange, and ultimately we will never surrender, at least our independent thinking. We'll talk and find no rest in these branching moments. Thank you, Goa. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Ms. Mamang Dai. Rasika Ho, our next keynote address is by Ranjit Hoskote, a poet, a cultural theorist, translator, and independent curator. He has several collections of poetry. Hoskote is the author of the acclaimed translation of a 14th century Kashmiri woman mystic's work, I Lalla, the Poems of Lal Ded, and the editor of the annotated critical edition, Dom Morai's Selected Poems. Last year, Hoskote was appointed to the editorial board of the Murthy Classical Library of India, published by Harvard University Press. He has been given the Sahitya Akademi Golden Jubilee Award, the Sahitya Akademi Translation Prize, the S.H. Raza Award for Literature, and the 7th JLF Mahakavi Kanhaiya Lal Sethia Award for Poetry. We welcome Ranjit Hoskote.
Thank you so much, Sheila. And I want to begin by thanking Bhai Mauzo and Vivek, Yatin, and Pushkar for having created this marvelous occasion for all of us to gather. And Mamang, that was such a beautiful reflection. My own reflection is probably a little more rough-edged, but you probably guessed that from seeing my cafe. Right. I would ask you to join me in a spirit of prayer for the children of Gaza. Children who have been slaughtered by relentless aerial bombardment and artillery shelling. Children who have been buried alive under the rubble of what used to be their homes, their schools, their libraries, their hospitals. Children who, even as we gather here in an oasis of peace and goodwill, are looking up at the sky above Rafah in dread, knowing that the forces of genocidal annihilation are upon them, and that no help whatever is at hand from any quarter. When the last of those children in Rafah have been massacred, Palestine's future will die with them. Do not imagine for a moment that Gaza is far away. Gaza is everywhere. Gaza is in the air we breathe. Gaza is in our hearts today, in a world that is interconnected in previously unimaginable and often sinister ways. Consider this. Technologies of surveillance perfected in Israel have been used in India against the voices of dissent, reason, and resistance. Drones manufactured in India are being used by the Israel Defense Forces, the IDF, in their onslaught against the civilian population, the children, the women, the men of Gaza. The USA is funding and arming the Israeli state, despite spirited criticism and brave, conscientious opposition by a large number of citizens of both countries who are aghast at the brutality of this campaign of extermination. Germany is arming and arguing on behalf of Israel. Many members of the German parliament seem to believe that the best way to atone for one maniacal genocide, the Shoah or Holocaust, is by aiding and abetting another, the Nakba. Some of you might know of my recent adventures in Germany. I was accused of anti-Semitism by the culture minister of Germany and by some folks in the German media, which was rich, coming from the grandchildren of mass murderers and addressed to me, members of whose extended family perished in the death camps of the Nazis. Wherever we may be in this world governed by the butterfly effect, however far apart in geographical terms, all our destinies are closely linked. The pathologies of control, the protocols of constraint, the mechanisms of oppression, and the techniques of expulsion are today interchangeable across Gaza, Kashmir, Manipur, the mineral-rich tribal districts of India, and the borders of Delhi, where India's farmers have assembled to demand justice as we speak here. In brief, wherever polarization has become the key political paradigm, vengeance a cultural leitmotif, and antagonism the dominant form of social relationship. And wherever the Führer principle holds sway, and as some of you know, it goes like this. Absolute authority flows down from above, absolute obedience flows up from below. In this spirit of pensive prayer and deep sadness at our precarious, percussive, and even traumatic historical moment, I would like to share with you one of the greatest, most moving poems ever written in the German language. Written in November 1914, it is titled Grodeck, some of you might know it, after one of the bloodiest battles of the First World War, fought in early September 1914 on the Eastern Front between the Austro-Hungarian Empire and the Russian Empire in what was once Galicia and is today part of Ukraine, another zone of war and devastation and the mindless waste of human life and potentiality. Grodeck was written by the Austrian-born poet Georg Trakl, who in his role as a medical officer in the Austro-Hungarian army participated in this battle and witnessed its horrors. He literally wrote from the front lines. In his official role, he saw the brutalized bodies of soldiers come in and tended to those who had been wounded and maimed in terrifying ways. He had to tally the mounting numbers of those fallen in combat, all young men with the entire arcs of their lives ahead of them, horizons that they would never explore. Grodeck was the last poem that Trakl would write. It was found among his effects 2 months after the battle, scrawled on the back of his will. In a deep sense, Grodeck was Trakl's last will and testament, his legacy embodied in a soul-racking cry. Soon after sending it to his friend and patron Ludwig von Wicker in Vienna, Trakl killed himself, paying the ultimate price of bearing witness to an uncontainable horror that had challenged his sensibility, mocked his sensitivity, and defied the resources of the language that he could summon up to confront it. I will read Grodeck first in the original and then in translation as part of what I regard here as my prayer. It goes like this. Am Abend tönen die herbstlichen Wälder von tödlichen Waffen. Die goldenen Ebenen und blauen Seen, darüber die Sonne düster hinrollt. Umfängt die Nacht sterbende Krieger, die wilde Klage ihrer zerbrochenen Münder. Doch stille sammelt in Weidengrund rotes Gewölk, darin einst zum Ende Gott gewohnt. Das vergossene Blut sich Monokule, alle Straßen münden in schwarze Verwesung. Unter goldenem Gezweig der Nacht und Sternen, es schwankt der Schwester Schatten durch den schweigenden Hain, zu grüßen die Geister der Helden, die blutenden Häupter, und leise tönen im Rohr die dunklen Flöten des Herbstes. O stolzere Trauer, ihr ehernen Alterer, die heiße Flamme des Geistes nährt heute ein gewaltiger Schmerz, die ungeborenen Enkel. And the translation goes like this. At evening, the autumn forests ring out with deadly weapons, the golden plains and blue lakes over which the sun rolls darkly. The night rounds up dying soldiers, the feral wails from their smashed mouths. But quietly they muster in the willow grove red clouds that host an angry god. The spilled blood itself, moon-like coolness, all roads meet in black rot. Under the night's golden branches and the stars, sister shadow sways through the silent wood to greet the ghosts of heroes, the bloodied heads, and a faint sound in gun barrels of autumn's dark flutes. O prouder grief, you bronze altars, the spirit's hot flame feeds on a vast agony today, the grandchildren never to be born. As writers, we know that the tenor of our lives, Mamang, you were talking about this, we know that the tenor of our lives, our ability to reflect, to compose, to be productive, is premised on a condition of retreat, on a temporality of long dwelling and slow release. We inhabit a deep interiority, responding to the world and negotiating with it, yet holding it at a constructive distance. We prize our solitude and regard it as a necessary condition in which our creativity can flourish unimpeded. And there is, of course, considerable truth to this, as we all know from experience. However, the trouble with this position, if it is taken to an extreme, is that it could translate into a privatism that privileges safety in turbulent times, a quietism that turns away from any form of criticality, which is integral to our task as writers of bearing witness. Truckle embraced precisely this task in Grodek, expressing it not through pious platitudes or easy slogans, but through the fierce, unflinching, affective claim that he exerted on the attention of his readers, through the churning of his language, the breaking and remaking of his images, his shattering and defilement of the romanticism of pastoral landscapes, a poetic choice that takes its cue from the shattering of bones and skulls by bullets, the mess of spilt blood, ripped flesh, curdled innards, and boot-trodden sludge that forms the visceral actuality of the mythos of heroism. We cannot turn away from this mandate of criticality, this ethical duty of critical action, when compelling circumstances in the public sphere call upon us to shift gear into another condition, that of engagement, and another temporality, that of urgency. We may delude ourselves into thinking that our voices are marginal, that they do not count, that they have neither consolation nor confidence nor a way forward to offer our readers in such times. But this would be a mistake. We cannot lull ourselves into the myth of a complacent irrelevance, while yet continuing to pursue our professional aims, instead of actively seeking forms, occasions, and forums in which to articulate an engagement that we must craft, an urgency that demands to be articulated. We are writers committed to an attentiveness to our own unfolding imaginative journeys, but we are also citizens of a constitutionally conceived nation-state, and in a larger sense of a world that, despite all appearances to the contrary, is closely bound together, even if through a montage of advantages and deficits, exchanges and withholdings, unpleasant shocks and redemptive surprises. The creative freedom that we so ardently crave as writers and that we uphold cannot be divorced from those larger freedoms that we share with our fellow citizens, and which guarantee our lives, our liberty, our scope for pursuing our hopes and dreams, freedoms that we must protect. As writer-citizens, then, it is our duty to step up to the mandate of testifying against the distortion and subversion of freedom, choice, and individual sovereignty by the machine of power. as Mir Taqi Mir, the great Urdu poet who lived at the end of the 18th century and the beginning of the 19th, in a time of chaos and collapse, as he wrote, "Shair ho, mat chup ke raho, ab chup mein jaane jati hain. Baat karo, ab baat padho, kuch baitein humko batate raho." You're a poet. Don't be silent. Lives are lost under cover of silence. Speak up. Read us a couple of lines. Read us verses. Keep talking to us. Significantly, the Urdu word bait, originally from the Arabic, is used here to mean a verse or poem. Literally, of course, as you know, it means home. Mir uses it twice in the plural here, employing both the elite and proper form, abyat, and the more demotic, rough and ready baitin, taking in all of society with high and low, aristocrat and artisan, all made equal as victims of oppression and the imposition of silence. Mir, through the voices of his auditors, is telling himself never to give up the duty of free and fearless speech, even as lives are being lost while people keep quiet. To give those who will listen a home, while the machinery of power has dishoused them from safety and turned them into refugees from the realm of belonging. And yet there are those who will tell us that it is never the right time to address the urgency of our epoch, to say what needs to be said, to speak truth to power. There are ethnic or communal sensitivities at stake. This is not the right time. The political backlash will be severe. This is not the right time. The public mood is adverse. This is not the right time. There are diplomatic issues at stake. This is not the right time. We do not have a sufficient base to make our dissent count. This is so not the right time. When will it be the right time? I'm looking at my watch and it says 5 to 7. It is 5 to 7 now, and now is the only right time there is and will ever be to raise your voice against tyranny. To raise our voices, for together we are polyphony, we are community, we are assembly, we are solidarity. To raise our voices against tyranny, to raise our voices against injustice, to raise our voices against censorship and the subversion of democratic dissent and the silencing of protest and every other ruse and trick and strategy that power deploys to curb and diminish the great human adventure of freedom, to curtail our right to curiosity, to creative exploration, our openness to forming relationships based on affection, trust, ethical conviction, and courage, our prerogative to uncover plural pasts and imagine plural futures without being conscripted into a unitary past and a centrally planned future ordained by ideology. Now is the time. In this spirit, I dedicate these words to the splendid Festival of Letters, Ideas and Debates, the Goa Arts and Literature Festival, now in its 12th edition. May it always be a platform for constructive engagement, a forum for the open and fearless discussion of the urgent. Thank you for your attention.
I'll do it, yeah. Ranjit, thank you. And I'm going to say something that I hope reminds you of the hymns that you probably sang in your childhood assemblies when you don't see any kindly light leading amidst the encircling gloom. As a writer, writers, they spare no pains, nor yet the rod, to see their tasks well done. I don't think the rest of the audience would relate to this, but I think he would, because these are words from his school song. We now have the unveiling of the artwork. Sagar Naik Mule will be 24 years old this coming June. He's still a baby, professionally. He was born in Ponda. He did his BFA painting from the Goa College of Art and his post-graduation in sculpture from the SN School of Fine Art, Hyderabad. Last month, he was invited as special guest for the 75th Republic Day Parade in Delhi by the Government of India. And for one so young, he has a long biodata. He has participated in events organized locally and in Korea, Bangalore, Mumbai, Bhopal, Gujarat in less than 10 years, which means he was a teenager when he first displayed his work. He has won the Prafulla Dahanukar Art Award for Goa State 5 times in different categories. Add to all this the workshops he has attended and conducted, the residencies he was invited to, and publications that have showcased his work. You get an idea of what this young man has done so far and what heights he is capable of reaching. Can I invite you to unveil your artwork? Come. Ladies and gentlemen, he is so shy. 1, 2, and 3. This is the artwork specially created for the Goa Arts and Literature Festival 2024. Sagar, please come here and tell us a little bit about your artwork. He's unbelievably shy.
Namaskar. My English is not good, but I'll try my best. Yeah. So I'm very thankful to Goa Art and Literature Festival 2024, all the committee members for selecting me as an official artist of this festival. Honorable all dignitaries and all my dear friends. This artwork is of I made the love of my soil, Goa, my people, my culture, and my nation. This I have done the artwork of Kavi art. Kavi art belongs to an origin from Goa, which is on the way towards dying. So and start it. कोंकणीन उलयता. So सगळ्यांक तुमकां आमचे गोंयकार कोण आसा तांकां सगळ्यांक खबर आसतलें कावी आर्ट हें गोंयकारांचें आर्ट आनी मातये पासून काव मिन्स द रेड सॉयल. So it is a local art from Goa. देवळांनी घरांनी आसताले वण्टींचेर पण ते मरताले कारण रिजन की आर्टिस्ट तेजेर कोण काम करिना जशें आनी हांगसरल्यान आर्टिस्ट आशिल्ले ते म्हाका दिसता पोर्तुगीज टायमार भायर गेले म्हळ्यार महाराष्ट्रा कर्नाटका इवन केरला. सो आर्ट वर्क हांगसर त्या टायमार कितें केल्लें 400-500 वर्सां ते तशेंच उरलेले. Being an artist of 21st century, हांवें कोविड-19 टायमार कावी आर्टाचेर गेलो हांव. कोविड-19 खूब जाणांक लागून वायट आशिल्लो, पूण म्हाजे खातीर कोविड-19 खूब बरो आशिल्लो. रिजन की कावी आर्ट हांवें त्या टायमार एक्सपेरिमेंट करून म्हाका दिसता नवरात्रांक हांवें तेन्ना 9 देवी काडल्यो. म्हाका दिसता ही सगळी कृपा आशिर्वाद कितें म्हाका मेळटा पळय न्ही, तो म्हाका त्या देवीनी 9 देवीनी दिलो आनी हे तांबडी मातयेन दिलो. म्हणून आयज हांव तुमच्या मुखार हांगसर आसा. सो इवन sir, this is when I started the campaigning of Kavi art. This Prime Minister of India, recognized this art form through nationally, and it got a national platform. So. आतां म्हाका अशें दिसता की कावी आर्ट हांव 21st सेंच्युरीन इन अ कॉन्टेम्पररी फील्ड कितके फुडें व्हरपाक शकता, होच म्हाजो प्रयत्न आसता. आनी त्या खातीर हांवें हो फर्स्ट टायम कॅनवासाचेर POPची प्लेट घेवन एक हांव स्वताक कसो एक मातयेच्यान पळयता होच एक करपाचो प्रयत्न केला. म्हाका दिसता तुमकां सगळ्यांक आवडटलो. आनी मातयेचो मोग आनी तुमचो सगळ्यांचो आशिर्वाद म्हाका सगळ्यांचो असोच आसूं दी. देव बरें करूं.
He's bubbling with so many things to tell you. He doesn't know what to tell you, how much to tell you. But what he said was that the COVID lockdown was good for him because it gave him time and space to experiment with this tamri mati, the red soil of Goa, which is used to make this kavi, this brown, reddish brown colored typical designs which are there in the temples of Goa. And this is the first time he's experimented with plates, clay plates, which are stuck on a canvas background. And he feels that he's kind of relating it to his soil, to his state, and he feels it gives him a sense of belonging. Thank you, Sagar. The next person to come here is Meena Kandasamy, whom I have heard several times before, and I love her poetry. She is a poet, fiction writer, translator, and activist from Chennai, Tamil Nadu. She has published 2 collections of poetry, and she has requested me to read this description. Described by The Independent. The Independent is a publication. As a one-woman agit-prop literary political movement, Meena Kandasamy is a poet, writer, translator, anti-caste activist, and academic based in India. Her extensive corpus includes 2 poetry collections, Touch, 2006, and Miss Militancy, 2010, as well as 3 novels, The Gypsy Goddess, When I Hit You, and Exquisite Cadavers. She represented India at the University of Iowa's International Writing Program and was a Charles Wallace Trust India Fellow at the University of Kent, United Kingdom. She completed a doctorate of philosophy in sociolinguistics from Anna University. I want to read this. Wait. What she says, I'm quoting this: "My poetry is naked, my poetry is in tears, my poetry screams in anger, my poetry writhes in pain, my poetry smells of blood, my poetry salutes sacrifice, my poetry speaks like my people, my poetry speaks for my people." I'm handing the mic over to her.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Vivek Menezes, for inviting me again to a very beloved literature festival. And Ranjit spoke about what's the right time, and if not now, when. And I think especially a lot of us in the literary community, writing community, are often feeling left out or bad because the numbers, there's not enough voices asking for a ceasefire, speaking about the genocide in Gaza, and I just borrowed his kafye, and I think that for people who don't find courage, please borrow courage. I'm just going to read. So my poetry collection was out a couple of days ago, and it's called Tomorrow Someone Will Arrest You, and I'm going to read these poems. A poem on not writing poems. These days, I write nothing except my eyes. Why share my drugs of angst or absolute godlessness when the price they have said will have to be paid in blood? Why speak of meat or beef when the aftertaste of talk is not just a threat of televised gang rape, but a village gathering to slaughter a man? Again, why force fit my words to capture the state, its terror, this state of terror, when friends who planned to read Marx had prison cells waiting for them? So why risk, why run for dear life, why rage at all? What cannot be said must be suppressed. Why show the scar on your thigh to strangers? Lessons I once learnt in my bedroom are lessons for life. So in lamp black, I only write my eyes in the ritual way some Tamil women draw a column each day. Rice flour, outsparking the early morning sun, rigid dots anchoring snaking lines, all discipline, a deception to hide the wildness, all symmetry, an excuse for keeping count. Watch a woman's hands dance in intricate design. Learn that it's her desire she's pouring out on her doorstep. Like her, this woman in the mirror is a woman who pretends to know her place. Each night, she washes her eyes, unwraps her word wounds, takes them to bed. At daybreak, she applies a fresh dressing. Thank you. One of those things that, between my last collection, which appeared 12 or 14 years ago, and now is that I've become a mother, and I think it's irrevocably changed me. And the kind of poetry I write, and it's also, I think, part of what's happening now in Gaza. 12,000 Palestinian children dead means that every time I kiss my children, or I put them to bed, or I watch them play, or I indulge in anything they ask, there's only one thing I think: well, there are children who don't exist anymore, and it's so unfair. You who never run out of words, you who never run out of words, comrade who bombards me with endless numbered arguments. How do you believe in absolutes as the seas rise, as ice shelves break, as spring comes in winter, as monsoon turns into a torrent of cyclones, as life halts for years and days resemble abandoned roads? Here, life is a roll of dice, a vagabond's paradise, but you dream in black and white. You punctuate small talk with your slogans, dazzle us with history as anecdote, joke, warning. Broken within, I ramble to a friend who soon turns lover. The comrade, he's my conscience, he has my heart, but he's unadulterated gold, too pure to be a jewel, too soft to hold a gem. To his spotless blue sky, I'm a thunderstorm, sending forth portents. We share you like a secret, I promise to be strong. In the kitchen, you and I, we hear the radio. The earth is on fire, the reports say. And I ask you, unsure, if we did right in having children. And for the first time, comrade, I catch your silence. This is the title poem, but it's also a poem I often I read the most often in the last 10 years. And it was written when two of my very close friends who are human rights activists in Kochi, Jason Cooper and Tushar Sarathi, were arrested in the UAPA. Tomorrow someone will arrest you. Tomorrow someone will arrest you and will say the evidence is that there was some problematic book in your house. Tomorrow someone will arrest you and your friends will see on TV the media calling you terrorist because the police do. Tomorrow someone will arrest you. They'll scare all lawyers. The one who takes up your case will be arrested next week. Tomorrow someone will arrest you. Your friends will find you active on Facebook a day later. The police logged in as you. Tomorrow someone will arrest you. Your friends will find that it takes 4 days to find 1,000 people to sign a petition. Tomorrow, someone will arrest you. Your little child will learn what UAPA stands for. Your friends will learn of Section 13. Tomorrow, someone will arrest you. You will be a leftist to the people. You will be ultra left to the leftists. No one will speak. Tomorrow, someone will arrest you. The day after that, you will be considered a terrorist for life. Tomorrow, someone will arrest you. The police will prepare a list of names. Anyone who would protest will be named. Tomorrow, someone will arrest you. You will be warned. You will be a warning to everyone fighting corporate loot and police state. Tomorrow, someone will arrest you. Your home will be searched tonight. You will be taken for questioning. Now, stop speaking. Tomorrow, someone will arrest you. The court, in a rare gesture, will give you the benefit of bail. The police will rearrest you in another case. This will go on and on. Tomorrow, someone will arrest your children. You will be underground. The police will tell your old mother to consume poison and feed it to the kids. Tomorrow, someone will arrest you, your partner, your children, your children's children. Some measures are essential to keep a democracy alive. Long live silence. This is a poem I normally don't read because I think it's really personal. But I think this is the kind of time when we cannot only talk about what atrocities happening. Sometimes we have to acknowledge that resistance is happening as well. A militant whom my lines cannot hold, whom my lips cannot kiss, whom my eyes cannot hide, whom my memory cannot mark with the date of birth or even death. No knowledge of her village laid waste, then displaced, and no mention of her songs seeking to seize a state, and no sign of a red star where she had stashed her dreams. In this book of martyrs, only that blood-drenched story in 3 bold words. One woman comrade to say she died fighting for her people. Sorry. I'm not sure how good I'm for time. I'm going to finish with 3 poems. Okay, and this is something I also want to talk about. You know, we are under fascism, and everybody keeps asking, oh, how do you cope with fascism? And I funnily say, oh, I cope with fascism by fucking around. But I think the thing is, what I have watched and is the destruction of so many of my friends who are artists, and it's not just the writers. Like, things are getting to people where it's destroying who they are. And this is a poem about somebody who I saw crumble in real time. They're after me. We spent an afternoon watching ferries to show me something. You would not point or pull me close. You shot it on your phone, passed it on. I expected beauty. You captured terror. Sunlight stabbing water, jittery dead leaves, unseen turbulence shaking tiny words into dread. Cameras were your knives to splice this life. You knew only to show, not to speak. You were in love with me that intense way an artist wants his muse. Your films were full of unmarried couples fucking, pretty women chain smoking, youngsters eloping. You ticked the coolest box of them all, controversy. In the beginning, they went off to you, a ban, a prize on your head, shunning you from their coteries, their award ceremonies. But then the predators made you prey, took pleasure in watching you run. They watched you cut away all your friends, watched you land each step with no trust, watched you descend into madness. They made you a tragic movie, artist as art. Now you run when no one is chasing. We call you by your name. Our echoes fracture mountains, freeze each crashing wave, but you do not turn back, you do not stop. You're breathless, you are on the run. So I'm going to finish with this poem. This is my translation of a Tamil poem, and the original Tamil poem is from the 6th century, 7th century. It's the classic Tamil poetry of Tirunavukkarasar, also known as Upper. And religious strife is not new to this land. So when the Jain emperor Mahendravarman of the Pallava Empire calls this Shaivite priest to be sentenced to death, and these are lines that Upper speaks or rather sings. Namarkum kudiyallom namanayanjom naragathil idarpadom nadalayillom. We are not the subjects of anyone. We do not fear the God of death. We shall not suffer. Were we to end in hell? We have no deception. We have no illusions. Namarkum kudiyallom namanayanjom naragathil idarpadom nadalayillom. Nobody is citizens and nobody is slaves, fearless of lynchings and beheadings, unscathed by the torrent of hellfires. We do not tremble at certain death. Namarkum kudiyallom namanayanjom naragathil idarpadom nadalayillom. As people we refuse to be ruled, as people we refuse to die, as people we refuse to suffer, as people we refuse to be deceived. Namarkum kudiyallom namanayanjom naragathil idarpadom nadalayillom. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Meena. We now have Damodar Mauzo's Konkani novel being launched, Jeevdiyon Kai Chamaru, in translation by Jerry Pinto. Jerry Pinto's own new translations of Tukaram will also be launched on another day. Jerry Pinto is a poet, novelist, translator, and recipient of the Wyndham Campbell Prize from Yale University and the Sahitya Academy Award. His published works include the novels M and the Big Whom, The Education of Yuri, Murder in Mahim, and 2 poetry collections. He has translated Damodar Mauzo's latest novel into English, titled Boy Unloved. May I request from the audience Vinuta Malya to please come to the stage. Thank you. Vinuta Malya is a journalist with more than 2 decades of experience in publishing as a book editor, with a keen interest in the business of publishing in India. She is visiting faculty of journalism, Flame University, Pune, and visiting faculty of English, Savitribai Phule, Pune University. She is deeply involved in PARI, the People's Archive of Rural India. The author and the translator will be in conversation with her. Bhai or Damodar Mauzo is contemporary Goa's literary giant. Recipient of the Gyanpith and Sahitya Academy Awards, he has written 5 short stories, fiction anthologies, novels, of which Kamalin has been translated into 12 languages. He has written scripts for films and won prizes for them. He has spoken up fearlessly even when there was a threat to his life to uphold what he thought is correct. He has served a 5-year term as a member of the Executive Board and Finance Committee of Sahitya Academy, New Delhi. Presently, he is the co-founder and co-curator of the Goa Arts and Literature Festival. Handing over the mic to the team. Vinuta Malya, please come. How do we do this? This is on and this is off. Okay.
I just wanted to say, Mamang, Meena, Ranjit, you make us proud. Thank you. Yeah, come.
Thank you, Jerry.
Not Let's see.
Thank you so much, Sheila, for that introduction, and thank you, GALF and the ICG, for hosting this festival year after year, of which I've been a regular, one of the regulars that Dr. Pushkar was mentioning. But it's the first time that I'm getting to be in conversation with Bhai, our beloved Bhai, and Jerry, two stalwarts, big names in the Konkani universe, and I am the outsider here.
No one is an outsider.
But what I mean to say is yes, so I'm an intimate outsider who shares connections with language, and who, when I come here each time, I try and build more connections with my ancestry, with the language that we all speak, and also learn so much about how much Goa has changed, perhaps, and the culture of Goa, which is so different from what would have been when my ancestors left. So this is each time a learning experience for me, and I'm delighted and honored to be here, and especially to lead this conversation today about this book, which Bhai, in fact, only saw this evening for the first time. The books have just come. So we'll keep this as a short conversation, because we'll move for dinner soon. But I wanted to begin by asking you, Bhai, that this is, the novel is about a teenage protagonist. And you are in your mid-70s, am I right? And
nearing 80.
Okay, nearing 80. And at this time, most novelists write about aging and loss and grief and memory, but what made you go back to to go the other way in that sense and talk about a teenage protagonist? And does it draw from your own adolescence in some way?
I'm not sure, but I don't think I've grown old. And I always feel one with the youth. So that probably led me to take up the issues related with the millennial children of this new century. And I have been very close to my grandchildren, and they also share their anxieties with me, what happening in the college, what happens around them. So probably that is the reason why I thought I should write about them. That's all.
Jerry, my next question is to you about, you've been translating from Marathi for a while. And
one book from Hindi.
And one book from Hindi, Swadesh Deepak. This is your first Konkani book. So did you have to learn, unlearn? How did it happen?
I tell you, the problem with Konkani is that it is a wonderful language, and it is also a shapeshifter. So Bhai comes from South Goa, I come from North Goa, and therefore there are two Konkanis inside our heads. They are Doodh Bahins. They are both mothers, fed from the same milk. They are nurtured by the same land. They are coddled by the same rivers, but they are also fundamentally different. And Bhai also writes in Devanagari, and he's a great proponent of the idea of Konkani to be written in the Devanagari script. As well, perhaps it should be. So when I was reading it, I often had to read it aloud to hear the word inside my head. Because what Devanagari will not do is give you O's. It will not give you zhs. And we have O's and zhs in Konkani because we have a Portuguese imprint, and you have to hear Bhai speaking Portuguese. He speaks an elegant, beautiful Portuguese. Once he was talking to me and he said something in Portuguese, and one of my cousins was there and she said, he's Christian. So I said, in all but faith. Because he speaks a beautiful, elegant Konkani Portuguese that was taught to him back in the day, it is probably not a Portuguese that's spoken in Portugal anymore. So it's just wonderful to be working with this. Learning and unlearning, I think, is something that you do with every single project that you take up. Because, Daya Pawar's Balut was Dalit Marathi. When I did the Varkari poets, it was 13th century to 19th century Marathi. When you're doing someone like Swadesh Deepak, it's Hindi, but it's Hindi with Urdu and Punjabi in the middle, and certainly misquoted English. So each time you're confronted with the way language continually shapeshifts and challenges you to catch the shapeshifting in another language.
So what drew you to this particular novel?
First of all, it's Bhaiya. Okay. Two things. One is quite like you. When I was reading it, I was fascinated by the fact that the protagonist is a 14-year-old. And it seemed to me as if, Bhai has never said this, but I think he was conducting a Gedanken, a thought experiment, asking himself, what would happen to a child if it grew up without love? Vipin Porab, our protagonist, has two parents from hell. They do not ever physically maltreat him, but they emotionally deform him. And they deform him to the extent that he is probably very intelligent at some cerebral level, but at an emotional level, he is almost arid and a desert. Into this world, a beautiful spring rain comes, a young woman who can love openly despite her own fractured relationship with romance and with the body. She offers love like a buffet, and he seems picky, choosy, and reluctant. And I thought, as an experiment in how necessary love would be to our complete development, this was an astonishing book, because there is a certain trajectory that is followed. It's a trajectory of emotional growth. And I often think that that when we do the Bildungsroman, we do the growth, how do we plot this development? And I saw a very beautiful pattern of development here that I was eager to explore in English.
And did you notice a change in Bhai's writing style from, say, Carmelin, which was his his early novel, which won the Sahitya Academy?
I'm very lazy, and I'm shamelessly lazy at some fundamental level. So I read...
You can't beat me.
I read Carmelin in English. And despite reading it in English, something came bursting through. Like I read it as if... some part of me was sociology, like a sociologist. Some part of me was saying, Amcheti, is she ours? Like, this is our Carmelin from our Goa, living this kind of life? In that kind of almost stupid upper caste way where you cannot imagine what life would be like. So another part of me was almost shocked by this novel. A third part of me was a very young writer who was standing back and saying, I want to write like this, this is how he did this, I want to do that. There's various Jerrys who are reading a book. There's not just one Jerry. This Jerry, now reading Carmelin again in Konkani, is deeply desirous of retranslating it. Really wants to do. Like, I want to see how this Carmelin will shape under my hands. I want I want some ownership in this Carmelin. So what I think that is one of the things that as a translator one does. You want to say, oh look, he set out a feast. Oh look, what a beautiful thing he did. Can I co-own this in a small way? Can I be part of this beautiful thing that has happened here? And so, one of my dreams is to translate Carmelin, probably.
What do you think of that, Bhai?
Well, I am listening to him as if he is talking about some wonderful book somewhere written by somebody. Nice to listen to him. By the way, I just want to show you. Hold on. This is the Konkani book, which runs into 352 pages. And though he has not translated it verbatim, but yet it is almost the same, 360. So they look different, but they are the same.
So this is the third translation of the novel, right?
Yeah. In fact, when I finished writing this book, and I believe that once it is written, it belongs to it goes in the public domain. I don't have any more right to speak about that. That is why I preferred this to speak about the book. And now that it has gone into translation, into English, I think it is Jerry's book. It's no more my book. But I was extremely happy when I don't know whether I can say Jerry agreed to or he offered to, but whatever it is, I was very happy that Jerry has taken up to translate it. And I have never seen any writer keeping up the word. He wrote to me that you should not be in a hurry. I may complete it. I'll take my own time. And not only that, he gave me the deadline. It will be ready. The first draft will be ready in this month. The final draft will be ready in this month. And he kept up his word. And I
have to say this also, because it was my first, your first anything is always a moment, right? It was my first Konkani translation, so I was very unsure and very shaky. And so I told Bhai, I want to come and I want to read the whole thing to you. And I want you to be sitting there in front of me. And I'll come. And then he said, no, come and stay with me. Now, this was wonderful, of course, because his wife is a phenomenal cook. And therefore, I would get bed and board and I'd be in this lovely house. And with Bhai, like getting up to Bhai in the morning is like two suns rising in the sky. So it was lovely. We went on walks together. We looked at place, like I went and saw his old shop. We went into a bakery where there was Mr. Noronha, who was sitting there with his and telling me all about how he baked his bread. It was a lovely time. The sad thing is that I had bargained for a week because I thought, Bhai is of a certain age, so I'll have to take it gently. So I said, I'll come for a week. 3 days later, we were done. We just read the whole book together. I read it. Shaila was a quiet participant and listener as well. We sat in that room and the only problem was that suddenly Bhai had become the flavor of the month with the Jnanpith. Okay, so he was going all over the place, and Shaila said to me at one of those functions where he was being given a shawl, she said, now Atang, we'll have to open a shawl shop. How many shawls have come? I thought that was very sweet. So, the benefit of translating a book is an increased intimacy with the mind of the writer, because you burrow into the mind of the writer and you're there. So I do not think I would know Bhai as well as I know him now, because I have translated his book, because I've worked with his language. His language has become a constant inside my head. And the reason why I had to keep that deadline was because he was so busy. So he'd given me that week, and we both cut out, December is kind of festival season. So we both cut out that week and said, this is it. This is the time we will do it. And it was wonderful working with him, because I think we had a few discussions and a few issues that had to be sorted out. But largely, and the fundamental thing I think about the translation is, what is the tonality of the original? And the tone of his book I saw as Vairagya, as the missingness of something. And that missingness, the missingness of light inside the house, the missingness of trees outside in the garden, which his father has kind of ravaged in the way that I could only think of Ian McEwan's cement garden, where the father keeps covering the garden with cement all the time in an act of violence. This Vairagya was what struck me. And I thought it was a beautiful book and a challenge to bring Vairagya as a Sai Bhava into English, which is not, the language of loss and yearning in the way that almost any Indian language can be, simply because we have an understanding of what it is to lose that is really very deep and fundamental.
Was this the first time you were working directly with the author in the translation process?
Oh, totally. I think the only other time, the other two times I worked with, the other times I worked with living writers, I sent in the manuscript and I said, take a look and see. One was Sachin Kundalkar, the other was Ganesh Matkari. And they both met me in coffee shops and we sat down and chatted and finished it in 2 hours, in 2 days. Perhaps I could have done that with Bhai as well, but I wanted to go and live with him.
I was so envious.
Yeah, exactly. And if you get that opportunity, why shouldn't you, no?
Indeed. And Bhai, this is, as I said, this is the third translation of the book. The first one was in Kannada.
Mine is the best.
Of course. The first one was in Kannada, and then it was translated into Marathi by Shailamai. So
Okay, that might be better.
So how was your experience working with different translators, and especially Shailamai also?
The translator of Marathi book was living with me, so it was very easy. We discussed almost every page, every chapter, and I think it took off well. In fact, I was a bit apprehensive when my book went into translation, when it went into Kannada and also into Marathi. But I'm very happy to say that both the languages got a very good, they gave very good reception to the translated versions. More than what I got from my Konkani readers. That was very satisfying for me.
Laws na tungta.
It's not that. I think Goans by nature do not react immediately. They wait. Even for Carmelian, nobody came out in praise of it. But whatever little they said was enough for me to be happy. The same thing here. But then I thought it would be very difficult to go into translation, particularly into English, because there are chapters which speak of the gadis, we call them, in Konkani, and there are many things which are related only to Goa, which sometimes are very difficult to go into other languages, particularly non-Indian languages. So, of course, thanks to Vivek, he has taken the novel into English in entirety. Thank you. Yeah, Jory, sorry. Did I say? By the way, I think I was a little afraid that Jerry might go on pampering Shaila here for our food, because I have been relishing every day. But I really, when Jerry came and spent about 4 or 5 days with me, it was a wonderful togetherness, I would say, as if we both belong to the same ethos, the same culture, same language, though he knows Konkani very well. Only thing is shy of speaking in Konkani. I think we should bring him in Goa, keep him imprisoned somewhere, and then he pick up the language, master the language.
So the Kannada translation, the title is Jiva Kodale Chaha Kudiyale. And in Marathi too, the title follows the original, which is Jiva Dyawa Ki Chaha Gyava. But you chose Boy Unloved.
Okay, we chose Boy Unloved.
Okay.
Let's get it clear.
Author and translator chose
Okay,
Boy.
author has to say something.
Frankly, when I write, the titles come to me. Unless the titles come to me, I do not finish whether it's a short story or a novel. But here also, as I was, as the novel was being written, I came across Albert Camus, discuss his works, and suddenly I came across that quote as a part of the narrative. The quote was, it is a very famous quote, should I kill myself or have a cup of coffee? But here the protagonist was fond of tea, so I changed it, and I think that is this quote appears in his mind towards the end of the novel, and I didn't have to struggle for any other title. So I gave the same title, Jiv Diu Ka Cha Maru. But then probably in Marathi also it was Jiv Deva Ke Cha Gyava. In Kannada also it meant the same, but when it went into English, it has changed. I think when he says we, yes, I was consulted, but Jerry would be better in a better position to explain.
Okay, we asked a series of young people, because the book is really aimed at young people. Would you buy a book called Should I Kill Myself or Drink Tea? And they said it sounded dismissive of suicide as something that is, for many of them, something that has claimed a friend, something that has wounded a family. And so I cast about inside my head and finally came up with Boy Unloved, because I felt that was in some way a summing up of my response to the book. This was my handle on Vipin. And I think if you get a handle on the central character, you see that he is extraordinarily bright in his abstract intelligence and extraordinarily dim-witted in his emotional intelligence, which is somewhat like most men. Mm-hmm. Yeah, then you kind of see that Boy Unloved might be a suitable title. But we ran it past Bhai, who was very generous in accepting it, and that's what the...
So Jerry, I read the first page of the Konkani original, and there's so much lyricism in the Konkani. How did you deal with that when you were bringing it into English?
See, I think the problem with English is that it is right now skeptical of lyricism. In the sense that modernism is a virus that has affected us all and made us frightened of lyricism, and it has to be contained. Now, there are certain exceptions which are allowed, I think. For instance, the Latin Americans may be lyrical, may be allowed lyricism, but that's part of a larger, I don't know how to put it, but I think there is a certain problem. When you are actually moving language, you want to look at what the original, not what the effect of the original is, but what is the intention of the writer in creating that lyricism. And I believe that the intention of Bhai's intention was to create a lyrical moment and then diffuse it, suddenly like puncture it, and present you with this specter of grimness. And so that's what I tried to do. Now, I'm saying this again. If you can read it in Konkani, please read it in Konkani, right? Even if it will, and please don't say things like, I read it very slowly. I read Konkani slowly. I will come and slap you. Because reading slowly is not a bad thing. Reading slowly is a good thing. So if you are forced by your unfamiliarity to read slowly, that is the language doing you a favor and creating for you a space for contemplation and reflection in your slowness, which will not be granted to you in the speed read with which you do English. So please read it slowly in the original if you can. And if you can't, then of course read it in English.
So is that how you've been working on your translations? Because these are now 3 languages already, and I'm sure you'll handle a lot more.
तेरे मुंह में घी शक्कर और क्या कहूँ मैं?
So is this how you do it? Do you read it slowly, and do you kind of sit with it for a long time?
So my first reading is lying in bed reading, like you would read a book, And that's just familiarization, because I think, Sheila kept mentioning Rasik. And often what happens to writers is we forget that we are Rasiks also. Because we become detectives. You're reading every book to see what you can steal. To see how you can take, when I laugh in a book now, I stop and I say, wait, how did he make me laugh? And I go back and I track it down and say, oh, okay, that's the structure of the laugh-inducing thing. So sometimes I must force myself to say, Jerry, this is a book that you will just read. So you lie in bed and you just read the book the first time. And when you put it down, do you feel as if you could live with this book? Could you have a intense affair with this book? Because if you choose to translate anything, it's going to be in your life. For the next 6, 8, 10, 1 year, you're going to live with this book. So you have to be sure that you can live with a book before you start translating it. So the first read is that. The second read is aloud, because you want to hear the rhythms of it. Now that I would not inflict on anybody, because I read the way I read. And really, one of the things that makes everybody so shy is because people mock each other in India about accents. And stop it! Stop mocking other people for their accents when they are speaking your language. They are coming to your language and they are trying. Respect the trying. Okay? So makes me so annoyed when people do that. And okay, anyway. This is not the place for this little rant. But I'm saying, I read it aloud to myself to see what music and rhythm I can. And then the third reading is the reading when it's standing in front of you and you're saying, Allah tu karam karna, Maula tu rahm karna, Vaq Devi tu dekh le, Jesus, Mary and Joseph save souls. All of you come down. 33 crore gods also come down, guide my hands. Then you remember that you're supposed to be an atheist. Then you say, okay. If you're there, do it. If not, then I'm on my own here. Then it's just like froth and like commit to the paper. You commit to the paper, and then once you've committed, then you're like, chal, kusti. Now you are wrestling with the book. Now it is like an intimate exercise where it is like all over you, and then it carries you. And like if you've made the intelligent decision of choosing a good book, then that wrestling is a great experience.
Bhai, what are you working on next? What can he translate next?
In fact, after finishing our reading, Jerry asked me, are you going to go for... next question.
Like what happens to Vipin afterwards, a sequel to the novel.
Let me tell you, though the last sentence is, should I kill myself or have a cup of tea? That is left open. Whether people do not know, readers don't know whether he's going to commit suicide or he's going to have his favorite tea. So here it is left open. The end of the novel is left open, and there is every reason that I should pick up the thread from what Jerry asked me. Are you going for the sequel? So maybe yes. There are many things open. Even his girlfriend, when he comes to know that she has committed suicide, nobody knows.
Don't reveal everything.
No, nobody knows anything. Yeah. So even she can be alive. But I mean, there is a lot of scope for the sequel. So,
जल्द से जल्द आ रहा है आपके शहर में भाई मौजो का नया उपन्यास,
translated by Jerry Pinto.
पढ़ने ना भूलिएगा, एक्शन और इमोशन की पहली मिलन.
Jerry, would you like to read something from your translation, a part, an extra?
No, Takasam. He's the original. This is Goa. These are Konkani speakers. No.
That's what I was going to
You read the same and I'll read it in English. So just a few, like 1-2 paragraphs. Sheila, 1-2 paragraphs के लिए time है?
One paragraph.
ओक ना चल रहा हूँ सांगतंग. हाँ, okay, very good.
Which one shall I go for?
I think always do the opening paragraphs.
Okay,
For a novel, that's easiest.
Yes.
I'm seeing this book for the first time also.
चाची कुणी आयली गॅस पेटयलो, वयर आदन दवरलें, उदक सळसळूंक लागलें. युरेका! पण आर्किमिडीस याद जावचे पयलींच जीब हुळहुळूंक लागली. कला आनी विज्ञान ही 2 तोंकां अशें म्हाका दिसतालें, पूण तांचो संबंद कितलो लागींचो तें च्या करूंक शिकलो तेन्ना समजूंक लागलें. च्या कशी जाली हाचे परस च्या कशी लागली हातूंत म्हाका चड मज आशिल्ली. पालो, साखर, दूद घालून गाळटसर म्हाका थार नाशिल्लो. कप तोंडाक लायलो आनी कश्टांचें सार्थक जाल्ल्याचें सूख मेळ्ळें. आरे, च्याचो वास आयलो तेले जाल्यार म्हाकाय गेली हाड. भितर बशिल्ले कडेन मान फरमायलें. हांवें पाल्यांतच थोडें उदक घालें, हयनयशें शिजयलें आनी दूद ओतून व्हरून दिली. घोट मारून तिणें तोंड वांकडें केलें. तूं पियेलो त्या च्याचो वास वेगळो आशिल्लो. ही च्या ती न्हय, साखर लेगीत ना सारकी. तोंड धापून हांवें कुलेरभर साखर व्हरून तिगेल्या कपांत ओतली.
Okay. Once again, the urge for a cup of tea. I lit the gas and put the water to heat. The water begins to boil. Eureka! Archimedes comes to mind, but something else brought me up short. At that age, just out of school, the arts and sciences had always seemed like separate silos to me. But when I learned how to make tea, I understood how deep the relationship between the two is, a matter of chemistry and gastronomy. I could have learned a lot more about how tea leaves became tea, but I was far more concerned with how the brew tasted. I go through the motions quickly, barely containing my impatience, and then the cup to my lips, the first sips, the spreading joy. Arey, I can smell tea. If you've made some, bring me a cup, my mother calls from within. I add some water, let the brew bubble for a while, splash some milk and take it into her. She sips, makes a face. The tea you were drinking smelled different. This isn't that tea, and there's not enough sugar. I set my jaw, go to the kitchen, bring a spoonful of sugar and put it in a cup. I want to say, now stir it, or must I do that too? But I stop myself.
On that note, I would like you to read the rest of this in the book. Read it in the original Konkani, read it in translation. The books will be available at GALF. And thank you so much for both of you for this wonderful conversation. And thank you all, audience. And Sheila, thank you. Hand it over to you again.
Lovely session. Thank you, Jerry. Thank you, Vinuta. Thank you, Bhai. Meena, Mamang, Ranjit, Sagar, thank you very much for this evening. Thank you, International Centre Goa and Goa Writers, for this wonderful festival. This section of this festival we now conclude. I wish everyone a good night, and I hope to see all of you for the sessions following tomorrow and the day after. Good night.
If Preetha Sardesai is still in the audience, could you please meet me near the stage?